What's up, dog? Ready for your interview today, man?
Oh yeah, let's get it going.
Get it on. All right, everybody. Welcome to HAMMERSTONE TV. This is our first inaugural interview. And
Wow, first.
It's our first, yes. And I would like to introduce to everybody my good buddy, bass player for HED PE, Kurt Blankenship. Kurt, how are you, buddy?
What's up? What's up? I'm good.
You're
Actually,
good?
I'm well. Excuse me, I'm well. I'm doing quite well. No corona,
No corona. Good, good.
as far as I know.
I want to thank you for coming to HAMMERSTONE Studios and sitting down with us, considering the current events.
No problem.
So, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us tell the audience where you're from and where this whole crazy bass player journey got started.
I am from Kent, Ohio. Born in Ravenna, next door. Lived there for a little bit, and then I moved down to Georgia, and then I lived down in Georgia for a little bit.
What was your earliest musical memory?
Earliest thing I can think of maybe is learning violin when I was a kid, and I think I was 8. I was doing a talent show at the elementary school, and I played Danse Macabre on violin.
Wow.
So that was my first public performance, and I don't really remember much before that. I was super young.
I don't think I've ever heard that story. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
You're a violin player, huh?
Yep. First instrument.
What was the first like band or musician that really kind of struck a chord with you and got you started on that musical path?
My first 2 favorite bands were The Cure and Red Hot Chili Peppers, which is a pretty stark difference there. But
Very stark, yeah.
yeah. Well, my brothers. I grew up in the '80s with 3 sisters and a brother, so there was lots of that going on. Madonna, The Cure, all that kind of shit. But as far as like actually getting into music goes, band-wise, I'd probably say Chili Peppers.
Chili Peppers, oh
Yeah,
yeah.
because it's just undeniable.
Flea.
What Hits? That was the record I jammed,
Yep.
which was already by like the early '90s. They already had like a greatest hits album out.
Yep.
So that was
Oh, yeah.
it. I just thought that's what the album was called, was What Hits, but it was already like their hits. Like, what
Exactly.
hits?
First off, let me ask, what was the that period of your life where you kind of like knew for sure, like, okay, I'm going to be a bass player? Like, how old were you when you figured that out?
Probably like 10 or 11, something like that. I never actually started like playing until I was about 12 or 13, and started taking lessons when I was like 14 or 15. But so I played violin when I was a kid, and my best friend Pete Finley had a brother named John, who was a guy kind of in the local scene. He played in some fairly well-known bands, and he was like, "Oh, bass, cool, here's a bass." And he kind of put it on me, and it was the exact opposite of the violin. It was like bigger, it was powerful, it had like big strings on it, and I was just hooked immediately as soon as I played it. I was like, I think I want to play bass. It was just so powerful and like big, and you can really like feel the instrument. It wasn't all like this
Tiny strings.
and screechy and whatever. Like I was pretty good, but it was, it's a complete different thing.
Well, that leads me to ask now, what was your first bass?
First bass was one that John Finley gave me, actually.
What was the brand?
It was a Fender. I think it was an '80s model, and I eventually sold it for like $20 to a family friend for some reason. Yeah, I don't know why. I just didn't have. I was a kid. I didn't have any money to like put into the bass, and I didn't really know if I was like really gonna be a bass player. I just loved messing around with it.
Yeah.
And mad years later, I hit up the guy, I think his name was Andy, and was like, "Hey man, do you remember I sold you a bass?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh man, one of those." So I never saw it again.
Yeah.
But the first bass that I actually like learned songs on and learned how to play on was a Casino.
Well, I don't even know what
Yeah,
brand it is,
it's probably some $200 like my mom got it at the local place called Woodsy's. And it's still in my closet. I tore the frets out of it. I was gonna redo it and just have a cheap fretless just to have one, but
Yeah.
I just never finished it. I don't know, but that was kind of my first learner bass, and it got me through to about 15, and then I got a G&L. That was my
Okay.
first real bass.
Yeah, your very first bass story kind of reminds me of like my first drum set story. My first drum set was a Sparkle Red Ludwig 1968. Ludwig. Yeah, I had another drum kit. This is when I was in college and I was living with a girlfriend, at the time, and she was kind of getting pissed because it was taking up a bunch of closet space, and she's like, "You gotta get rid of his drum set. It's doing nothing.
You gotta pick me or the drums.
Pick me or the drums, right?" Kind of thing, you know. And I had this like newer Ludwig, so I was like, "Okay, I guess I'll just get rid of the old Ludwig." Little did I know that a 1968 Red Sparkle in prime condition is like, you know, God, you know, it's worth so much money now, you know. Not to mention the fact that it just sounded ridiculous, but you know, yeah. Everybody's got that story of like, oh, why did I ever sell my first instrument?
Yeah, I mean the Fender I had probably wasn't worth anything, or it was kind of a beater. And there's a picture for me in like '95 playing a chord on it, and I was like, yeah, I don't know, it's probably a piece, but I still wish I had it now, obviously.
So who was your first major influence?
Playing bass wise, I would definitely say John Paul Jones, Led Zeppelin. That was like my encyclopedia when I was like 14 to probably 19. That was just, I mean, I learned lots of other stuff too, but that was the foundation, like the groovy rock, a little bit of funk, you know. I learned the crunch, so that was like their funk song.
Yep.
And it's just they got a lot of stuff that's not that hard to play that sounds great, and there's different levels to it. Like at the end of Ramble On, like JPJ just turns it on, man, and just turns into an animal. And like the Lemon song is like basically a bass solo, so there's some shit in there if you dig for it, but they got so much good material that you just can't deny. So Zeppelin was huge for me, and learned lots of 311, and as I got better, like Chili Peppers and like Primus stuff. Yeah. So I started becoming like a bass player, I guess you could say.
Yeah, John Paul Jones, man, he's probably the most underrated bass player out there, and like
still kicking.
And still kicking, and he's like, out of all the guys, you know, he's not like the lead singer, he's not the lead guitar player,
he was utility man.
He was a utility guy, played organ, he played bass, you know, he wasn't John Bonham like all the other guys were huge personalities in that band, and then there was John Paul Jones in the background just filling everything up.
Yeah.
You know,
played mandolin, backup vocals, upright bass, church organs, like just crushing.
So tell me about the first real band that you were in. It was a fairly, from what I remember you telling me years ago, it was a fairly heavy project back in Ohio, right?
Yeah, you're probably referring to Kaligo, Kaligo. I would say I'm gonna take a step back real quick and say my first band was in high school with my bros, Jamie, Ben, and Jason Kurtz, and we had a band called Anatolis, and we are actually kind of good.
Okay.
We didn't have like a bunch of gear and stuff, but you know, we could play, and we wrote our own tunes, and we rehearsed all the time, and we sold our 100 tickets for the Cleveland Rock Off, and we got to pick the last spot. We did not advance. We got out, we played a couple shows, but the band you're referring to, Kaligo, that was definitely much more of like a real thing where we like, you know, once again rehearsed all the time. But they had already had kind of a following before I got in the band.
Okay.
So they were actually starting to draw like a few hundred people. We did some local touring, like some regional stuff, and I was with them for like four or 5 years or something like that.
And this was in Georgia or in Ohio?
It was transitional. Like we started in Ohio, and then some things happened, and we all moved down to Georgia.
What was the local music scene like in Ohio at that time? Like what clubs were the clubs to play?
We were a metal band. It was we were a little different though, because we were like not in a Pantera kind of way, but kind of like a power groove band. We had lots of like really groovy shit, so it wasn't just like all the time.
Right.
But most of the bands that we played with were like thrash metal, kind of like, you know, definitely more straight up just metal bands. And honestly, like I wasn't into the scene at all, because I didn't really like any of the bands. I like metal, but I'm like kind of selective about it. The good shit, like, you know, like old Megadeth, Metallica, Pantera,
right?
Like the good like classic shit. But I don't know, I just never, there was a couple bands that were pretty good that we played with, but I just never was really like that into the scene. But we played with Stem a lot, who did the UFC, like the main UFC song. Those were our homies, and we packed it out with them. There's a few other bands that we played with that were good.
Did you ever feel like in your scene, like there was a potential, like, you know, out here everybody seems to come to LA because there's that potential to, you know, run into somebody who's a record producer or, you know, an A&R
Anyone
guy.
could be at your show.
Anyone can be at your show, exactly. Did you guys have that kind of feeling in Ohio? Like, okay, if we're just good enough and we pack shows, somebody is going to come and see us and maybe we can get a deal? Like, was that opportunity like?
I don't think we really ever thought too much about that. Because we were young, like they were about 17, I was 19, and our singers were a little older. So we were still kind of young, just wanted to get out and play shows and just be a good band. I think we definitely could have got something more official like that rolling, like maybe some kind of deal or like getting on tours with national acts. But I know that we could have done something like that, but I don't think we were like, we're gonna get a record deal or something like that. We just wanted to be a dope band that was out playing shows. And I mean, we were turning some heads and pulling some people and starting to play with. We opened for fucking so many national bands. Kill Switch. We played with Meshuggah, Mushroom Head a bunch of times. We never really looked for like a manager or anything like that. Probably should have. Let us play, let you business.
So let's flash forward to what brought you to Los Angeles, sunny Southern California.
Yes.
So what brought you out here?
Excellent question, Dustin.
Thank you, Kurt.
So I had moved down to Georgia with all the homies, and some things happened, and it kind of fell apart, and I didn't really need to stay there anymore. Didn't want to go back home up to Kent in the mode of like, I want to be a professional musician. I want to do studio work and teach, and in my mind had to finish college. I had dropped out of Kent State a couple of times. I went to UGA, and I had free rides at both colleges. And I was like, well, I gotta finish school, so, what am I doing? I was like, okay, I want to go for bass. There wasn't too many places offering that for electric bass, and Musicians Institute was one of them. So I basically checked out the school, hit them up, won 2 scholarships. I needed to finish school, and I wanted a different change,
Right.
Cut the dreads, got me a scholarship or 2, cruised out to MI, and did the thing.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how you and I actually met.
Ooh. I got to LA September 5th, 2009. It was my birthday 3 days later. And so I got up in the school and was just kind of walking around, like checking the school out. I was looking either for like the best flyer, like best, nicest flyer, or the flyer that was like paid opportunity, bass player, whatever. Like I'll play whatever. And Raccoon had the nicest flyer. They had the best one, so I hit them up, and here we are.
They had the creepiest van.
Yes. The best van, you mean?
The best van.
Oh, man, so many people all the time were like, oh, yeah, that's that van that drives around. It's like, yep. And I was not.
That van brought me my CPK one night.
That's so funny, because I didn't really know where this place where we are right now was.
Yep.
So I was driving up Cahuenga, and goddamn, there goes the Raccoon van. I was like, that's it.
That's it.
That's where I'm going.
Yep.
So I just followed the van right up to the studio.
So let's talk a little bit about HED PE. Okay, so you've been in HED PE for several years now.
Yeah,
And,
January it'll be 6 years.
6 years. Wow, that's a good run.
Been a little grip.
That's been a grip, yeah.
Lil Grip's one of my AKAs.
How did that opportunity come about? How did you get into that band?
Craigslist.
Oh, Craigslist.
I had come off Warped Tour in 2014. I was playing with Wax and George Watsky, and I made enough to kind of just like live off that for kind of the most of the rest of the year. It was a period where I was looking for gigs every day in Craigslist. I would just, go to like the gig section, events, community, whatever, and just would type in bassist, bass player, musician, until something popped up. And actually, the first time that something ever popped up in the job section was HED PE needs bassist, all caps, immediately, our guy wants to go home. And like that basically was the post. And it was like, call Jared, blah, 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 here's the number. I was an endorsed skateboarder in the mid-90s, and the guy who ran the local skate shop, his favorite shit was HED PE. Like, I remember him blasting that back like when I was a kid.
Nice.
And I had mad friends in high school that loved HED PE and were into that style, like the new metal. I didn't know if I was gonna look the part because they were looking a little bit more like punk rockish kind of, and I was like, I'm just kind of more like skater guy.
There's a little crossover there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Let's hit up Jared and was like, found your ad, seeing if you need a bass player. I just got off tour with Wax, who had a #1 hit in 3 countries, and I went to school for bass, and I was like, I can play, don't worry, like I got you.
I'm your dude, I'll learn these songs.
He was like, well, I'm talking to like 20 different dudes right now, blah blah blah. I was like, just ignore them. I got you. I need a gig, and I'm, I got you. Don't worry about it. So like basically the next day they were playing at the Whiskey And I cruised down to see if I wanted, because, you know, the audition kind of goes both ways. Do I want to be in this band? And they were tight. And it was basically just like a groove band, like a heavy pocket band. Mm-hmm. Played a little reggae, a little funk, a little hip-hop, a little metal. I was like, that's cool. The band was good. So I checked them out, and I was like, yeah, I'm down. And pretty much like the next day, they picked me up in the bus. They just pulled up the street and loaded my shit up and took off. And so nobody knew if I was going to actually like stay in the band or if I was going to be in the band. I was just filling out the end of the tour for the bass player, Mark, who was an OG from back in the day. He's the original bass player. Nobody knew what was going on. I was just going to knock this tour out and get a little money. So did that. It went fine. I had basically 3 days to learn the whole set with almost no help.
Like a crash course.
On the bus, people partying. Like, I'm in there just stressing out. Like, holy shit, I know I can play this shit. I just got to know what the tunes are.
Right.
Killed it, and I guess they just couldn't take a step back. They were like, well, we gotta have you now. Finished that tour up, a couple weeks went by, Jared called me, and I was painting a house, and he was like, dude, I got some crazy news. So yeah, I guess they kept me. I didn't even know that they were gonna keep me, they just did.
When you were on that first tour, and you were doing your crash course on the songs, did you chart out the songs, or were you just like memorizing parts?
I did kind of at first, just to be like, this song, this is how this goes, okay, these parts. I didn't do too much like charting. The songs are almost like play, don't play, play heavy, soft, play heavy, play soft. It's kind of those dynamics, like at a surface level when you're first looking at it and learning the tunes. Mm-hmm. In the hip hop, there's a lot of bass drops where, you know, it'll cruise along and then drop. Yep. You know, let the vocals ride. So there was a lot of that. So I had to keep my eye on the drummer and Jared like the whole time for the first like 3 shows. And once I like knew the songs, and before we hit the stage, I was like, guys, please follow the set list. I don't know what the songs are, just like please do me this favor, because like you might call another song and I'm like, I don't know what song that is.
Yeah.
But you know, he did me that solid and got through it, and it was fun.
So tell me, what's an average day on tour with HED PE like? You know,
average day,
you get up in the morning and what happens?
So the vehicle that we're rolling on is an Allegro Class A diesel. So we got 3 of us got bunks. The driver kind of makes his bunk in the front. Two of our techs sleep on the couches. Jared's got a room in the back. Figured I'd lay that out first. But we'll pull up. You know, the drives are anywhere between like 2 to 12 hours, something like that. They're generally like 5 to 8. Something like that. It kind of depends on the drive, but if it's like a short drive and we pull up in the morning, we'll pretty much either go to like Planet Fitness or Walmart, which at first I was like, oh, that's kind of genius, because you can just pull up and buy whatever you need for the day, get your pump. But yeah, we'll pull up to Planet Fitness. You know, some of us work out and take a shower. That's cool. And then, you know, maybe we'll go to Walmart and get whatever we need for the day.
So was the Planet Fitness membership part of the payment plan for
That'd be cool. No, we got to shell out for our own. And then we usually got to get to the club at about 3 or 4, like 2 or 3, something like that. Load out, you know, that might take an hour. We got 2 techs that do that. Band dudes don't really have to do anything. We just kind of kick it till sound check. And then we kind of, depending on the venue and how much time we have, is kind of dependent on what happens with the sound check. But sometimes we'll just like run a tune real quick and be out. Sometimes we'll like go over something that we haven't played yet or that we're going to change up for that night. We'll just talk about it and just kind of like knock it out. We're very straightforward raw band, like bass, drums, guitar, vocals. All of us do backups, and we have a sample pad for the drums just for like 808s and like trap hats and shit like that. So it's very straightforward. Then we do sound check, and that usually wraps up around 5. Doors are usually at like 7, and then as soon as doors open, I go to merch and I do my merchandise. I make the baselets, I do necklaces, and I paint skateboards, hot items. So basically, as soon as doors open, like I'm there at merch selling my own shit until pretty much right up until we play. And then as soon as we play, like I make a beeline for the merch table and just continue selling. Maybe have a couple drinks, talk to people.
Get to know the crowd,
you know, dilly-dally here and there. And then, you know, we usually load out around like 1 or 2, something like that. Once again, depending on what the drive is. If it's a long-ass drive, we got to be out of there. If it's a short drive, we can kind of kick it. Basically, as long as we're at the show on time, ready to rock, we can kind of go do whatever we want.
Sounds like rockstar life to me. Let's transition to more kind of current events and talk about the pandemic. You guys were on tour when the shutdown happened.
Yes.
So where were you? Where did you guys get stuck?
We were in the New York, like upstate New York area. We caught wind that things were starting to happen, and we thought that we were going to be able to like kind of fly under the radar and like finish the tour, because we still had like 2 weeks left. We were about halfway in. We were coming from the West Coast, cruised out to the East Coast. We started hearing that there was like attendance caps, and they had shut the border down in Niagara Falls, which affected our attendance. But the cap that night was like 250. But the show was still banging, and then we had like, I think that was actually the last show, and we had 2 days off the next 2 days, and so attendance caps went from 250 to 200 to 50 to 10.
Jeez.
And pretty much as soon as it hit the 50 mark, was on a day off, we were like, ugh.
Yeah.
And then it hit the 10 mark, and Jared had a band meeting like, hey guys, we don't know what's going on with this. Like, we're gonna maybe have some spotty dates coming up, people canceling, like, I don't know, we're just gonna tough this one out. And then either later that day or the next day, he was just like, fuck it,
we're done. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't play for 10 people, can't make any money on that. So
if we get 10 people at $1,000 a piece, then we're good. But
hey. But yeah, pretty much like the next day we were on flights home.
Yeah.
And that was like March 13th.
So how has all of this affected the band's plans? Like, what did you guys have set up for the rest of the year?
Oh, we had the whole year booked up because it's the 20th anniversary of the biggest, most popular album, Broke. So we were gonna play a good chunk of the Broke album, and so we had like the whole year like booked, and we had like UK dates, we had Europe dates. I was actually supposed to be in Russia on my birthday, which would have been cool, St. Petersburg. Cool. So we had dates all over the place. I'm pretty sure we had Australia in the books too, and I heard Greece, which I hadn't been to yet. And I guess as kind of like a safety net, we had booked August, September, October, hoping that the thing would blow over and we'd get something in. But it came up on August, and we were like, this just ain't happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, that just got canned. We just never really even talked about it since.
Yeah.
It's just got to open back up.
Assuming like best case scenario, we get a vaccine, everybody's cool. What do you think would happen, say like this next year? Do you think you guys will go back on the road? Are you gonna maybe write another record? What?
I think we're gonna go out and hit it probably as hard as we can ASAP. Like, Jared just likes to get out there and just tour constantly.
All right, we're going to take a quick break from the interview, and Kurt has graciously agreed to play us the song First Blood from the album
Class of 2020
by HED PE.
History repeats. This time be ready. Who said time in our world? This won't be fresh as hell. Up in it feel like yesterday. Lights cannot ring the bell. Evil that men do live after them. The good is often dead with them bones. Angels who long top after them. Fight it down in blood and die alone. But not in vain. Live the fight another day. Once a master, now a slave. Born in violence, not the same way. But not in vain. Live the fight another day. Not a master, once a slave. Born in violence, not the same day. God knows the glory. Divine and conquered, now we're living in sin. So help me, God knows the glory. Divine and conquered, we're all living in sin. I don't want any trouble. Just walk away. I stand my ground. First step, dehumanize it. It's not enough to subjugate. Colonize, dehumanize, then justify and separate yourself. Evil that men do live after them. The good is often dead with them bones. Angels who long top after them. Fight it down in blood and die alone. But not in vain. Live the fight another day. Once a master, now a slave. Born in violence, not the same way. But not in vain. Live the fight another day. Not a master, once a slave. Born in violence, not the same, not the same, not the same day.
aside from Head PE, do you have any other side projects going on? Could we expect some sort of solo material from you sometime soon? What do you think?
No official side projects, but I do write tunes at the crib. They're not really like full production, full songs. They're kind of like sketches that I can get as much of a song done as possible. And if there's something that I think Jared could deal with, I send him tracks here and there. And I'm not really like working with anybody or really doing any side stuff. Just basically just kind of waiting to go back and tour. Really.
Let's talk about your touring gear. What companies do you endorse? I know you brought your bass with you, and let's see this beautiful thing here.
So
or I can hold your microphone for you.
So the bass I've been playing for this last couple tours while we still could is a Mike Tobias Design MTD, and his USA basses are totally handmade by him and his son Daniel. And I think they have one other guy that comes in and does some sanding, but they make them.
Absolutely beautiful.
It's a maple burl stained black, and then we got the matching roast bird's eye, and then we got a stained swamp ash body and neck.
Beautiful.
Yeah, super lightweight. That was like one of my first main criteria was like, I need a really lightweight bass because we're touring constantly, and I'm jumping around. With, I had another bass that I really loved, is a Sadowski, but it was just weighed like a brick.
I remember the Sadowski.
Yeah, it was a great bass. It was definitely more like Fender. It's like a super Fender kind of, but it was just too heavy. It was just too heavy, and it was time. It was time for something crazy. So I balled out for once in my life and got an MTD.
And didn't you at one point? I think I remember when we were jamming with Raccoon. You had like a blonde Fender. Was it a Fender Jazz?
Yeah, it was a Marcus Miller model. But yeah, that's a great bass too. But yeah, I got some Nordstrom pickups and preamps and that, and so it actually sounds pretty much like Marcus Miller's bass.
Okay.
The rig that I played through is Gallien Kruger. They're just the shit. Their gear sounds so good. And the pedals I use are I got a thing with Earthquaker Devices. They make great stuff. They're out of Akron, Ohio. They're all entirely handmade. I got a couple dark glass pedals. They're taking over the hard rock market with their distortions and compressors and whatnot. I also use an Avalon U5 direct box for my preamp.
Booyah.
The pre after the pre in this bass. So the pre.
The pre.
But yeah, it sounds ridiculous. Just bass stuff, it's important to have good equipment. Those low frequencies, just cheap gear just won't do it. The bass for Head PE is like half the sound. I'm not gonna say literally half the sound, but
it's a big. I've seen your shows.
Reggae hard rock, the bass got to be banging.
It's got to be banging.
Oh, and I also use DR strings. Sorry.
Oh, DR
yeah, they're
strings.
great.
Okay, throw that in there. Last thing, I want you to put yourself in the fan zone for a minute.
Fan zone.
And tell me, if you could be the bass player in any band in the history of music, what band would that be and why?
I've always really loved 311. They've always been huge for me. Not that I'm out here like trying to replace Peanut or nothing, but they just...
I was going to say, Peanut, watch out, buddy.
Yeah, man, he's the shit. The whole band's the shit. But they just got that brotherhood that the Chili Peppers had, like the love unity thing, and they just got they're coming full range. They got the hard rock, they got the hip hop, they got the funky reggae shit. I just always loved them. Great harmonies, shredding solos, searing drums.
Oh, I know.
That's just kind of been my shit.
I remember the first time I heard the Blue Album, I was actually setting up for sound check at a place called the Berkeley Square in Berkeley with a band that I used to be in back in the mid-90s. I forget which tune it was that came on, but I remember asking the sound guy, like, dude, he had this just killer music cranking through the monitors. I was like, what the hell is that? And he's like, oh, it's this band 311, man. This is their first real big record. I'm like,
311.
I'm going to go buy that record.
Yeah.
And became a huge fan. I was lucky enough to actually get to meet Chad Sexton and, actually worked for him for a little while.
Yeah, you built some of his Drum City, right?
Yep. Some of Chad Sexton's Drum City. I worked in both of those shops and got to meet his mom and his brother. And, yeah, great family, really cool people. And
nice.
Chad's another one of those like gentleman musicians. He's not a rock star asshole.
The whole band always seemed just really genuine and like super cool.
Yeah.
So I just always loved them. Just kind of always wished I could rock with them.
Cool. Well, Kurt, I want to say thank you so much for coming down to Hammerstone Studios.
Right on.
For inaugural interview of Hammerstone TV.
The first one, huh?
The first one, man. I want to thank everybody out there in Hammerstone land for joining us today. If you would be so kind as to hammerstone that like button, subscribe to the channel. He's been giving me shit about
That's
hammerstoning
awesome.
the like button. But hammerstone that like button, subscribe to the channel, share the video. If you like the video, make comments down below. We're going to be bringing more stuff in the future. So until then, everybody, Curtis, thank you again, my brother.
Thanks for having me.
Great to
Pleasure
see
to be
you.
here. I haven't been in this room for mad years, and it's
Mad years.
cool to be back. It was the first place I ever started jamming in LA.
Yeah.
How appropriate.
How appropriate that we're ending it with an interview, you know? Good times.
Yeah.
So, all right, everybody, thank you so much.
Peace.
We'll see you in the next video. Bye.
Hands are shaking, the world is aching. Feels like the end of time. A hopeless chance with a foolish stance. The answer you will never find.